Ericka Wills from the University of Wisconsin-Madison is going to get up here and talk to us a little bit about Warrior Met strike. So, Ericka, come on up here.
Thank you, and I'll keep my remarks short because I know we want to hear from Kim. But I actually met Kim for the first time in Alabama, in Brookwood, at the UMWA Warrior Met strike. So my name is Dr. Ericka Wills. I'm a member of the American Federation of Teachers, Local 1521. Yeah, right there. And I'm a professor at the University of Wisconsin's School for Workers. And how cool is that? That we still have something called a School for Workers? That's amazing. It's not labor-industrial relations. We don't have management in there. We're about the workers. We do non-credit education for union members, for workers, for activists. That's what we do. So I'm working there, but I'm actually from outside of Bloomington, Illinois. I'm from Colfax. You know the cornfields, if you know where that is. Yeah, so I'm from Colfax, Illinois, and I just moved to Madison the beginning of August from Colorado. And in Colorado, I live not too far from the site of the Ludlow Massacre. Y'all know the Ludlow Massacre? Of course you do. Of course you do. And you know Mother Jones' role in the Ludlow Massacre and her rallying the women, her taking to the streets of Trinidad, her getting arrested and going to jail, but her leading that strike, and then after that tragedy, where at least 13 women and children suffocated to death, when troops and a private militia hired by Rockefeller set those tents on fire, and she would say, the voices of those children from Ludlow are coming to you today. And I think about Mother Jones, and I think about that organizing, because what's happening right now in Brookwood, Alabama, with the United Mine Workers strike against Warrior Met Coal, I think the spirit of Mother Jones is there. I think Mother Jones is right there. We have mine workers here. Let's hear if you're mine workers. You here with the mine workers? Yeah. It's a righteous union and it's a righteous fight. And just like in Ludlow, where Rockefeller went in and it was capital with a war on workers against labor, the same thing's happening in Brookwood. But it's different. And it is accelerated, it's amplified, it's global, and it is Wall Street money. The four biggest shareholders of Warrior Met Coal are Wall Street investment firms. And you know what? That's the reality for 13 million workers in this country today. 13 million workers work for companies that have a Wall Street investment firm as their largest shareholder. So that fight going on in Alabama, that's about working conditions, that's about wages, that's about what those miners deserve. But they're fighting for all of us. Because they're writing the playbook on the ground of what capital, labor, industrial relations are going to look like going forward. When we have to take those fights not just to places like the mine in Brookwood, Alabama, but to Wall Street. And to those funds across the U.S. and across the world. Yeah. And they're creating those tactics. And we got to support them in it. Yep. So I want to ask you to contribute tonight to the strike fund and for the families and the women and the auxiliary that are holding the line there in Brookwood. Because I've been there with Kim. We've been to the auxiliary. We've been to the food pantry. She's done some amazing work there that I know she's going to tell you about tonight. Because there's women who are making sure those families stay fed. They're making sure there's coats and clothes for the kids. So I ask you tonight, in the spirit of solidarity and the spirit of Mother Jones, to contribute to that. And I thank you for having me here, for allowing me to speak, and allowing me to come home, back home to Central Illinois. So thank you so much, and for all your work. Solidarity.
I'm going to make a couple of comments here because, you know, the thing I found about Kim's book is it's about people that are not recognized about the labor movement. And it says, the untold history of American labor. And, you know, there's a hell of a lot of people who've been out there and done a lot of stuff. I can look around this room, and I know a lot of my brothers and sisters have stood up, and on more than one occasion when it wasn't popular. So you can learn a lot about it. Cecil Roberts said, fresh and compelling fight like hell breaks through the silence and brings the voices of workers and their families to the forefront of where they belong. The foreword, by the way, of this book is written by one of our former speakers, Sarah Nelson. Yay. You know, who my biased view is would be a great president of the AFL-CIO. So a little bit from that. From the moment I read Kim's work the first time, I knew Mother Jones would have loved her. I remember clicking on a link to an article, what a labor union is and how it works, only to discover that it was inside the pages of Teen Vogue. In between pieces about style and pop culture was a story explaining unions to teenagers.
Oh, hi, can you all hear me? All right, I have a little mouse voice despite looking like this, so bear with me. And it's true, I do not look very much like Jim. I probably have more tattoos than everyone here put together. Yeah, you know, this is the working class. We're allowed to look how we want. That's a part of being free. But, so, we are here tonight to remember a woman named Mary Harris, known to us and to history as Mother Jones, and to celebrate her legacy during an incredibly exciting new moment in labor. She must be so mad to not be here. Can you imagine what she'd be up to right now? And as we all know, Mother Jones feared no man. She was always up for a scrap, and danger meant nothing to her. She was perfectly happy to put her own body on the line when needed, and sometimes it was needed. During her day, labor conflicts and battles and mass strikes were far more commonplace than they are now. And unions had a lot more power, or at least were a lot less afraid to use it. Millions of people were willing to fight tooth and nail to join a union, and many died in pursuit of that goal. Her era was a brutal one, stained with workers' blood, smudged by the gilded capitalist fingerprints that continue to pull us down to this day. But it was also a time of excitement and militancy and hope for the working class. And we are living through another moment like that right now. Yes, the job titles have changed. The world has changed. The world has evolved in a lot of ways. I mean, I can't imagine trying to explain Uber to Baird Rustin, or video game workers to like Fanny Sellens. But those primary conflicts that motivated our forebears, our brothers and sisters and siblings that came before, we're still fighting those battles right now. Good versus evil, labor versus capital, the bosses versus workers. You know, it's all the same, you know, everything old is new again. And when Mother Jones told us to pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living, she did not include an expiration date on that sentiment. She knew that the struggle would continue, and she hoped that the great-grandchildren of her revolutionary age would continue the fight in her place when she was called home. Now, I don't have to tell anybody in this room about the importance of her life and her words and her deeds. And, you know, she was one of the first historical labor figures that really spoke to me, that I came across even, because I don't know if you guys know this, but labor education is not necessarily a priority in all of our nation's schools. It's the damnedest thing. And, you know, I grew up in a very rural place without a lot of resources, without a real library, without mail pickup, or mail trash pickup, without much of anything. And so I came to labor history a little bit late. All I knew about it is what I picked up at home, because I'm from a union family. But I came to it later because I was kind of a history nerd, and I found myself really captivated by the 19th century, the early 20th century, and the Gilded Age. It was just so exciting and bloody, and it just felt very alive in a way that The stuff I was reading about in school didn't. And now you can't read too deeply into either of those subjects, into any of those eras, without coming across Mother Jones and all her friends, like Big Bill Haywood, like Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, all of our faves. And I was always drawn to the most radical people I could find, the iconoclasts, the troublemakers, the hellraisers. You know? So of course I became a big fan of Mother Jones. How could I not love the woman who struck fear into the hearts of mine guards and policemen everywhere, who was described as John Brown in petticoats? I mean, so when I finally found it, I devoured her biography, and I kept seeing her name pop up when I was reading about other labor conflicts and other historical events. Our girl was everywhere. She got around. And that was before we really had airplane travel, so that took real commitment. This image of the fiery Irish grandma dressed in black with a sailor's mouth and a preacher's thunder captivated me then, and it still does. And there's a reason I named my book Fight Like Hell after one of her most iconic quotes. You cannot tell the full history of labor in this country without Mother Jones and without the working class women that she fought alongside and inspired. Yeah. Whatever the fight, don't be ladylike, she told us over a century ago, as the wives of striking coal miners across, she called the wives of striking coal miners across Appalachia to action. During labor clashes, her greatest weapon was the womenfolk. She was known for actively encouraging women and families to get involved in strikes and for organizing wives into mop and bucket battalions to fight alongside their husbands on the picket line and hold down the home front. At the time, we were shut out of most union activity. You know, unions weren't lining up to recruit women workers. We were mostly told to get back in the kitchen. And that was not something that was going to happen on Mother Jones's watch. We were relegated to domestic duties or worse, caught in the crossfire as collateral damage. But as Harris and other trailblazers showed, the working class can only succeed by harnessing the power of all workers, regardless of gender, race, age, language, or any other identity marker. This lesson has proved to be a guiding light for my work as a labor reporter and an organizer and just a hopefully decent human being. And I'm certainly not alone in that. There is a reason that the strong union women of the Pittston Coal Strike, who called themselves the Daughters of Mother Jones, when they marched into the headquarters of Pittston Coal Company and refused to leave for 36 hours. They held the line on strike, worked in the strike kitchen at Camp Solidarity, and participated in pickets and rolling blockades, keeping the strike alive as so many union women had done before. Their namesake would have been proud. And there is a reason that the union women of Brookwood, Alabama wear Mother Jones pins when they're serving up hot dogs at weekly rallies or handing out grocery bags to strikers' families. As Sister Ericka just mentioned, the Women's Auxiliary of the UMWA that are locals that are still on strike 18 months in Tuscaloosa County. These women, they've become my friends. Some of them have become my mentors. I'm in a bunch of group chats with them. We've become very close because our lives are very different, but the important things, the places where we meet, fairness, equality, taking care of the people you love, that's where we meet. That's the stuff that matters the most. That's why I care so much about them. That's why I keep coming down to Alabama. I live in South Philadelphia. It's not that close. Wow. I mean, the barbecue is a great reason to go visit, but I would much rather go down for the victory party than for another report on how they're getting screwed. And without these women, and you know, it's not just women, there are retirees, there's all types of people in this auxiliary, but it is the women. They have kept this strike alive. They kept these people alive. There are children who have been born and know no life but this strike. Think about what can happen in 18 months. And every week, every day, these women who are mothers, who have jobs, who have other responsibilities, are dedicating their time and effort and energy, what little they have, to picking up donations and packing groceries and getting donations from other people, going on social media, giving interviews. They are working so hard. And I'm so glad that we got a chance to acknowledge and honor them right now and to send them a little money, send them a little love from Illinois, because they need it and they appreciate it. And you know where Mother Jones would be right now if she was alive. So I mentioned my book, and you've seen it out there, and Jim very nicely mentioned it. And I realized I didn't really mention much about it, but its name, which is, it's important, but there's other stuff in there too. It's called Fight Like Hell, The Untold History of American Labor. And it came out a couple months ago. It's my first try. I think I did okay. You'll have to let me know afterwards. And it's a people's history of labor in the US, and it's also a love letter to the working class. My book focuses on women, Black, brown, Asian, Pacific Islander, indigenous workers, disabled workers, queer and trans workers, incarcerated workers, sex workers, and so many of the people who have been left out of the big picture of what we're told labor looks like and who labor is in this country. We know that white guys in hard hats built so much of this place, but the rest of us have always been here too. And I wanted to write about that. We're all important, and it's through the work of historians and archivists and the journalists who were there at the time, oral histories, all the people that put so much work and love into preserving these stories. That's how I was able to write this book, by digging through it and pulling it out and trying to pull it all together in a way that showed that every fight for justice in this country has intersected with labor. Because no matter if you're on a picket line, you're at a protest, you're at a rally, you're occupying a federal office, you're calling your senators, you probably have to go to work the next day. The early days of labor might seem like kind of a dusty historical throwback to some, at least compared to this new organizing wave that we're living through with Starbucks and Amazon. I think we have a brother here who knows a little bit about that. And all of these efforts and all of these young, diverse people who are becoming involved and really just seizing this moment. But we gotta remember that these workers were fighting for the same things that we used to have to fight for. A decent wage, safe working conditions, a little bit of dignity, a little bit of respect. There's still millions of people in this country who are abused and underpaid and undervalued, and sometimes who even lose their lives on the job. They're exploited and worked to death. And that's why we're here. And that's why it's so important to tell their stories and bear witness to their lives, because they matter. It is definitely a heck of a time to be publishing a labor history book. I didn't know all this was going to happen when I sat down to write it. That was in 2020. I was just trying to survive a plague like everybody else. And it was kind of funny. I was just in my little room in Philly writing my little book and seeing Striketober and the GM strike, Kellogg's, all these things were happening. And all I wanted to do was run to the picket line. I was like, no, I have to finish my homework. And I made an exception for my boys in Alabama, because I got called down there in February of 2020 to report on the organizing effort at the Bessemer, Alabama Amazon warehouse, which was not successful, but they're still fighting. They have not given up. You can be a union without getting that rubber stamp, and that's something they really understand, right? And I came across the Warrior Met strike because I just kind of happened to be there, and I heard, oh, there's some coal miners on strike down the road. I was like, oh, cool. I'll get some donuts and go say what's up. My thought was okay, this Amazon effort got so much attention, this would be the next big story. My little journalist spidey sense was tingling, oh, I should get down there. And I got down there, I got to meet some of the guys, this is a big deal, this is really cool. And then no one else showed up. It's been really difficult to get attention for that strike. And that's something that I think a lot of people are probably familiar with. Some strikes get headlines, some get ignored. And it's kind of this weird alchemy that determines who gets attention, who doesn't. But they're all important, and they all deserve to be written about and supported and uplifted. And whatever the New York Times may think, every worker's struggle is important and deserves all the attention in the world. But that leads a little bit into, I was going to talk about a couple of the themes that are in my book, because I think it's important to talk about what I've been up to, but more importantly, I think they're true of a great deal of labor history in general, and I think Mother Jones would approve. So first, some people have been left out of the American dream. I don't think anyone in this room would argue with that, at least anyone's been paying attention. But thankfully, people have been trying to change that, to fix it, to do something about it for centuries. And one of my favorite characters in this book is a man named Ben Fletcher, who helped organize a strong and effective multiracial union on the Philadelphia waterfront 51 years before the Civil Rights Act. He was born into a vibrant multiracial neighborhood in South Philly in 1890, not far from where I live now. And he was the son of formerly enslaved people who had moved up north for a better life. He spent his days working on the docks as a longshoreman, and his nights organizing for working class liberation. He joined the Industrial Workers of the World when he was about 20 years old, and quickly became a key organizer for Local 8, a dock workers union made up of black workers and Eastern European immigrants. His vision for the advancement of his community was a mix of labor action, multiracial solidarity, and anti-capitalist intent. Industrial unionism is the abolition movement of the 20th century, he wrote in a letter to the Baltimore Afro-American in 1920. And if sufficient number of workers rally to its standard, complete industrial emancipation will be the heritage of all us workers, and we will become disenthralled from the thraldom of the rich. He could write too. As historian Peter Kolb notes in his book, Ben Fletcher, The Life and Times of a Black Wobbly, Fletcher himself was a fearless speaker and union advocate and traveled up and down the East Coast organizing workers. He was unflappable, charismatic, and utterly devoted to the cause. But unfortunately, in 1917, against the backdrop of World War I, the US government decided that he and his fellow radicals had become too dangerous and arrested scores of them during an anti-leftist sweep known as the Palmer Raids. Ben Fletcher was put on trial for espionage and sedition in 1918 and sent to the US Penitentiary in Leavenworth, Kansas. He was given 10 years and a $30,000 fine, which is like $500,000 in today's money. His sentence was commuted in 1922, though, and as soon as he was freed, he dove right back into organizing. This fearless son of South Philly dedicated his life to labor and was far from the only person willing to risk it all to better the lot of his fellow workers. And the second major theme in this book is simple. Everyone deserves to be treated fairly. You would think it'd be simple, and yet we're still fighting like hell to get to that point. Another one of my favorite people in this book will probably resonate with some folks in this room, especially the mine workers. Her name was Ida Mae Stahl. She wasn't in a union. She probably didn't consider herself to be a leader, but by sheer force of will, she paved the way for generations of other women workers by refusing to do what she was told and to go back in the kitchen. Mother Jones would have loved her, and it's a shame they only miss one another by a few decades. So after following her father into the mines when she was a little girl, Ida grew up to be tough and strong and a damn good coal miner. As a teenager, she worked alongside her husband in a small Eastern Ohio country-backed drift mine, an independent operation dug out of the Appalachian Hills by hand. By 1933, in her mid-30s, she had become part owner of a mine near Jewett, Ohio, a first for a woman in the mining business. Though Appalachian women like Stahl had been quietly working in family-owned mines for decades, Ohio state law forbid the weaker sex from engaging in a host of manual labor jobs, coal mining included. Stahl was both a pioneer and an outlaw, and she knew the lawmen would come looking for her eventually. Sure enough, in 1934, federal mine inspectors showed up and ordered her to get out of the mines. See, Ida Mae Stahl liked her job, though, and was furious at the implication that her time would be better spent at home doing what she termed baby work. And moreover, she was really good at it. You know, she took pride in her ability to outwork her male counterparts and didn't mind the hard labor. To her, it was vastly preferable to a life lived indoors. Overalls, boots, and a miner's cap suit me better than silk slippers and a butterfly hat, she told one reporter. My face gets black, but I prefer coal dust to a powder puff, and I'd rather use a crosscut saw than a golf club. This may sound unladylike, but but every woman to her own desires. Mine is digging coal. Ultimately, her ownership in the mine is what saved her. She went to court, she fought it, and in 1935, she got her job back. Right? 1935 was not a great time for women. But she was like, I'm not gonna swear, but she was not having it. And it took several more decades, and President Johnson's 1967 Executive Order 11375, which strengthened enforcement of the policy barring hiring discrimination on the basis of sex, to remove the last major hurdles for women who wanted to work in the mines. But Ida Mae Stoll made it clear back in the 1930s that it was ridiculous to bar someone from a job just because of their gender. Especially since, as she once said, I could show that mine inspector a thing or two when it comes to muscle. She was kind of like me. She was not a little lady. An ocean away from Appalachia, workers on Hawaiian sugarcane plantations also illustrated the importance of fighting for equality. In 1946, when 26,000 sugarcane workers and their families, 76,000 people in all, walked out of the fields and into the streets. At the time, sugar bosses were recruiting thousands of Filipino workers, hoping to sow division between them and the existing Japanese, Chinese, and Korean workforce. They wanted to make sure the workers wouldn't organize, so they kept them in segregated camps. They tried to make sure no one spoke anyone's language. They wanted to keep them apart because they didn't want them to come together. But their union, the ILWU, International Longshore and Warehouse Union, foiled the boss's racist divide and conquer strategy by treating all of its members as equals. It empowered community leaders to act as union stewards, conducted meetings in workers' languages like Japanese, Ilocano, Tagalog, and Basilan, and emphasized interracial and multi-ethnic solidarity in the strike plan. They set up soup kitchens where the workers cooked for one another and shared recipes. They organized a shipment of rice to help calm the strikers' fears that planters would try to starve them out because they'd tried it before. They told them, you are all economically exploited, whether you are Japanese, Chinese, Filipinos, or whatever else. And working people recognize that. Akam McElrath, an influential Chinese Hawaiian organizer with the ILWU, later explained. All of the information that was given to them was, look, you're exploited. What are you gonna do about it? And what they did was win. They won a higher raise than they'd gotten in 20 years. And they did it because they embraced their differences as a strength, not a weakness. They refused to be divided, and there's a very strong lesson there. And that brings me to my last little lesson, the last theme. Solidarity is our greatest weapon. Yep. I believe it was Big Bill Haywood who once said, if the workers are organized, all they have to do is put their hands in their pockets, and they've got the capitalist class whipped. And we've seen that happen time and again throughout history, from back home in Philly in 1835 when we played host to the first general strike, to the Great Railroad Strike in 1977, the Great Textile Strike in 1934, Pittston in 1989, and so many others. Even the ones happening right now, from North Hollywood to North Philly. And as we all know, strikes are just one of the tools in the working class toolbox, but they can be awfully effective when wielded wisely. And as history has shown, strikes are always strongest when they are multiracial, gendered, multilingual, multi-everything. Diverse coalitions of workers that know that giving into artificial divisions is doing the boss's work for them. And Mother Jones understood that principle implicitly and acted on it too, in an era where some labor leaders gave in to their worst impulses of racism, sexism, xenophobia, and pushed to keep certain workers out of their ranks. Mother Jones didn't discriminate. To her, the entire working class was her family, and she gladly gave them everything she had. So I know we're done dinner, but I'll leave you a couple words to chew on. As you all know very well, the work is never done, but victory is always possible. We've triumphed before, and we'll do it again. We've lost a lot of battles too, but even those losses have left us with important lessons for the generations of workers that come after us. And we have to continue building on the legacies of those who came before. from Mother Jones to all of her great-granddaughters who have followed in those footsteps and continue to try to build the world she so badly wanted to see. In conclusion, I believe that the cause of labor is the hope of the world, and if we fight like hell for it together, that world is truly ours to win.
All right, everybody, my name is Drew Dzinskis, and I am a Amazon worker. We are currently getting ready for a strike on Prime Week. Don't buy shit from these folks. I also used to work here at Southwind Park. Hold on, I'm absolutely making a TikTok of this because this is priceless. I used to work here at Southwind Park, and many years ago, I walked away from my union. I gave up. I gave up on a lot of things. I gave up on the union, and I gave up on myself, but you know what? Labor never gave up on me. Because you know what? Unions are like diamonds, they're forever. And I'm here forever because when the union's inspiration through the workers' blood shall run, can there be no power greater anywhere beneath the sun? And what force on earth is weaker than the meager strength of one? And the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. It is we who plowed the prairies, built the cities where they trade, dug the mines and built the workshops, endless miles of railroad laid. When now we stand outcast and starving amongst the wonders we have made, and the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong. Oh God, we did it! Oh, we did it! Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Enjoy the sweet little city of Springfield tonight.